Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are located. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You have been invited to a very special event, and we welcome you all and thank you for being here. We are going to open this important conversation with Sister Lillie Jackson, the chair of NABSW Health and Wellness Committee. Welcome, Sister Jackson. I will step back and let you take over.
Thank you, my sister. Good afternoon, brothers and sisters, and welcome. I'm going to open up with a quote from the Atlantic magazine to remind us that we are living in 250 years of slavery, 90 years of Jim Crow, 60 years of separate but equal, 35 years of state-sanctioned redlining, and until we recognize the compound moral debt of our ancestors, America will never be whole again. I'd like to welcome, first off, I'm going to introduce them and they will present in that order. First up, we have the context, the story of the Chattanooga brick by Dr. Melissa Speight Vaughn, educational researcher and cultural studies innovator. Then next we have systematic racism, none other than our own Dr. Johnnie Hamilton Mason, professor of Simmons University School of Social Work, followed by the demands for reparations, the harm report presented by Dr. Onaje Muid, the male co-chair of NCOBRA Health Commission. Then next, the psychological harm, Dr. Obari Cartman, president of the Chicago Association of Black Psychologists. And last but not least, the emotional emancipation circle, healing from the root causes of systematic racism, presented by Enola, founder and president, Community Healing Network. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Melissa Speight Vaughn, and I'm going to share the story of the Chattahoochee Brick Company. I am the secretary of the board of the Chattahoochee Brick Company Descendants Coalition, and the history of the Chattahoochee Brick Company will give some context for our gathering today. So in 1878, the Chattahoochee Brick Company was founded by Captain James English. English was originally from Louisiana. He was a Confederate captain, and after the Civil War, he served a prison sentence and then moved to Atlanta and started the Chattahoochee Brick Company. In 1880, he was elected mayor of Atlanta, and he commissioned for all of the streets in Atlanta to be paved with bricks from his brick company. If you remember, Sherman during the Civil War had burned down all of Atlanta and the whole route down to Savannah. So Atlanta was rebuilding, and the best way to rebuild was using bricks as opposed to wood. So how did they find the labor for making the bricks? It was through convict leasing. So in 1865, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, except for if you are convicted of a crime. So Black people, women, children, and men, of course, were convicted of, minor crimes and given exorbitant sentences so that they could go into the convict system and be leased out as labor. There were many different convict leasing companies, like there were mines, coal mines, there were lime factories, turpentine factories, things of that nature. But the brick companies made, of course, the most money because everything needed to be rebuilt. And of the brick companies, Chattahoochee Brick was one of the largest. And most of the convicts, over half of the convicts in the state of Georgia, worked at the Chattahoochee Brick Company. So their conditions were very poor, because the difference between enslavement and convict leasing is that they literally could work the convicts to death. So many died of starvation. Many died of disease, because they had to sleep like on wet mattresses in unsanitary conditions. They were fed spoiled food, rotting meat that had worms in it. And some were disfigured from flogging. So there were daily floggings that there's an account of a 14-year-old boy that was flogged 75 times, twice a day. So their conditions were horrible. There were also women. They didn't separate men from women. So women were in the prisons as well. They gave birth to children. They became impregnated during their prison sentence. And the children had to stay there in confinement with them. So English amassed so much money from his brick company and some of his other factories that he had to start 2 banks. So he started the Fourth National Bank and the National Bank, and those 2 merged together, and they are now known as Wells Fargo. In 2008, Wells Fargo did issue an apology for their role in convict leasing, but that's about it. So the Chattahoochee Brick Company Descendants Coalition, the group that I'm a part of, we're on the mission of memorializing those convicts and their families that they were torn away from, and just remembering them on the site of the Chattahoochee Brick Company, which was just purchased by the City of Atlanta and the Conservation Fund. But the whole story of the Chattahoochee Brick Company does kind of show how throughout history in the United States that Black people are only seen in one specific role, and that being subservient and labor, producing labor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Speight. The next person. Dr. Johnnie Hamilton Mason.
Sister Johnnie, you on mute.
Let's see.
Sister Johnnie.
I'm trying to find, I can't see. Oh, I see. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
You can hear me. I am so sorry. I think that every time I hear the story of the Chattahoochee River Brick Company, I just have to pause and think for a second. So I'm going to talk to you about systemic racism scaffolding and how Dr. Melissa's story sort of fits into a framework of systemic scaffolding. And scaffolding is a term that comes from educational psychology. However, myself and my co-authors use scaffolding as a metaphor. And as you can see on the screen, this is a picture of scaffolding. And it could be a painter scaffolding, someone could wash windows on the scaffolding, and you could see through it as pretty sort of present there, but it moves and it morphs and it changes. And that is our sort of metaphor of systemic racism, which fits with the atrocities that were just described. So as I said before, scaffolding is important in social learning theory, and it comes from developmental psychology. And if you look at the image of the children that are on the scaffold, the children that are placed at different levels. And the whole idea is that we learn in interaction with different individuals, and metacognitive processes are shaped that way. We learn how to think procedurally and strategically and conceptually. And the idea is that older children or people that are ahead of us in a certain skill set sort of pulls us along. And that is how the framework for systemic racism is perpetuated in society. So our definition of scaffolding really is about the scaffolding that supports and maintains racial discrimination, and it helps to prevent the collapse of this morphing entity, because as it morphs, it changes. Systemic racism morphs, it changes. You move one thing around, you get justice in one area. And there is this idea of a structural stability of scaffolding that has really existed since the very formation of this country. And that in and of itself, it is socially constructed. So in terms of our idea of scaffolding, this is an image from the book that I co-wrote, which talks about systemic racism in the United States. And as Dr. Melissa described, there were systematic structures and measures that were co-opted along the way to keep the brick making company in business and making money. And we argue that scaffolding is founded on neo-capitalism, that it's related to the market structure or the labor structure, and that it continues to shift and change, but many different factors sort of keep scaffolding in place. And if you look at the image, scaffolding is held together by poles and rungs, similar to the scaffolding that you saw in the first slide. And these poles and rungs are exploitation, the violence, it's marginalization, powerlessness, and cultural imperialism. And these factors sort of hold it in place. And then we have colonialism, and we have cultural imperialism and legal measures, and so on and so on. And these pieces sort of interact and shape systemic racism as we see it today. And what I like to argue is that anything that is shaped like this can be undone. And this is an analysis that comes from the People's Institute of Survival and Beyond. And as we look at how the scaffolding is done, what we're doing in terms of reparations is looking at ways to dismantle the system, as well as to create opportunities for us as a people to break down the barriers that have been created and have been exploited over time. So this framework really emphasizes economic stratification, power, and then the dimensions of racial oppression that continues as we speak, and it's shifting and changing, and there are many forms of it. So I will end with that and ask you just to think about the scaffolding that you know, and then to think about the scaffolding that you heard in the story that Dr. Melissa shared, and how it fits into this framework of systemic racism and how the system continues to recapitulate itself over and over again, and what our call is as a people to dismantle the system.
Thank you, Dr. Johnnie. Up next, we have Dr. Onaje Muid, the demand for reparation and the harm report.
Thank you, all of you, for attending. On behalf of my co-chair, Lisa Davis, and the Health Commission, and certainly in COBRA, we'd like to thank all of you for attending. And I'd like to especially give acknowledgement to those in the committee that brought this program into being. The National Association of Black Social Workers sent out an announcement that in 1913, one of the sororities, whose name I can't remember at the moment, founded itself with 22 African-American women from Howard University. And we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, and it would be remiss for me not to mention them in terms of this is a continuous struggle from the time that we were kidnapped from our motherland across the mid-Atlantic, the Middle Passage, and of course the terrorism of chattel slavery and all the other types of forms of oppression that occurred. But we're on a trajectory for our freedom and for our liberation, and it's unstoppable. It will take place. The harm report really came out of the work of Dr. Kenneth Navi. His book is called Another Case. It's kind of blurry right now. It's Another Case for Reparations, Competent Proof, the Legal Standing African Americans Have in the Battle for Slavery Reparations, Kenneth Navi. And it was his introduction to Cam Howard a number of years ago that brought forth the idea of this thing that in the genes, because of the environment, they get expressed in an altered way, thereby compromising the body's ability to protect itself in terms of its immune system, the body's ability to have proper functioning in terms of kidneys. And we know that in every Black community you go today, there's all these renal failures, these businesses where now we are being farmed, right? Our kidneys are being farmed where so much money is being made. So when you look at the work of Kenneth Navi, he says that that's the first time I've seen the expression of epigenetic inheritance. That's the first time I've seen that particular phraseology. But we also want to bring into light the work of Aldra Nelson, The Social Life of DNA, Race, Reparations, and Reconciliation After Genome. This book is very important as well for us to read. Let me see if I can take off the
remove your background filter.
and I do that by going where?
Good question. You will have to go into your video settings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, if you see the little arrow on the right of start video of that video camera where you can turn off your camera.
Okay.
You hit that arrow and you can go to choose video. Okay, there you go.
So this is the book, The Social Life of DNA. And in the book, she brings to our attention that why is it that after, and I hadn't heard of this individual before, what's his name? 1 second. Venture Smith from 1729 to 1805. a formerly enslaved man under the glaring lights of British broadcasting system, where his body was exhumed, and he had an account of being kidnapped from Africa, coming to the United States, being enslaved, and he gives a whole history. I hadn't even heard of this person before, and certainly I need to get his book. But she raises the question, why is it that we would have to exhume his body for the genes to refute or to affirm the story that he told about his life? So this is about us controlling our narrative, not only in terms of the aspect of genes, but also in terms of what we say our history has been. I'm very proud to say that Cobra has taken this upon ourselves to bring this work forward. So in the chat, you will find a link to the harm report where everyone can pull that down. And what we're encouraging us to do is three things. One is letting Cobra understand the report, have the discussions. One, two, then how do we bring it to the Black community? And then three, how do we bring it to the general society? Now, of course, these areas are not mutually exclusive because one can be at any part of them, but certainly it's taken an approach that's bringing us together. We feel that our work is going to be fruitful when we are able to break down the silos that we find ourselves in. And that is not even intentionally wanting to separate ourselves, but there's so much work to be done in our own particular domain that sometimes we forget to see who's to the left of us and to the right of us. So I'm very, very proud to say that we have the National Association of Black Social Workers here on this call. We have Cobra on the call, and also with the National Association of Black Psychologists. And we're going to continue to build out like that. So that's one strategy that we're using with respect to the report. How do we get it out to the people? But another thing is called social health circles. What a social health circle is us coming together and discussing the report, and then seeing what projects that we are participating in that'll give us a greater foundation for the work to be done. Of course, in Kwanzaa, we call that Ujima, collective work and responsibility. So these social health circles offer us to affirm our health, to affirm our wellness, to affirm the fact that we are each other's medicine. That's how we're going to heal, is by us healing each other and knowing that we are each other's medicine and be able to confront the lie that has been implanted amongst us. So with that, I want to say thank you everyone for coming. We have a whole series of events that we are planning for the year that we want you to stay abreast with. Brother Olufemi will give us what those dates are and what those events are later on. Thank you so much. Asante Sana.
Thank you, Dr. Onaje. And we want to remind you to put that book in the chat. Someone asked for that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Next, we have speaking about emotional emancipation circles, healing from the root causes of systemic racism. Sister Enola Ari.
Sister Lillie, I believe Brother Dr. Obari is going before me.
I'm sorry.
No problem
My
at
eyes
all.
moved.
No problem.
Thank you. The psychological harm, Dr. Omari Chartman, who is president of the Chicago Association of Black Psychology. Please, sir.
It's cool. I've been skipped before. It's okay. I've never been skipped by such an esteemed group of folks. So it's just an honor. No, I appreciate the invitation to be here. I'm always, I feel stronger when I gather with my elders, particularly in a moment like this when there's so much chaos and turmoil and people are trying to find the new thing. It's always the old thing, culture, elders, the things that's sustainable that give me peace in moments like this. And in my generation and younger, I'm sort of representing the younger generation right now, even though my back don't feel that young. But my generation is full of chaos. We've lost the order. You can say whatever you want, whenever you want to say it, and it ain't got to be based on nothing. So it's just a privilege and a pleasure to be here with y'all to share this space. I'm representing the Association of Black Psychologists. I am the president of the Chicago chapter here, and this organization that shaped me, that created the blueprint for the work that I do And I love every opportunity we get to collaborate with NCOBRA and the Black social workers. Very clear that I got a PhD in white psychology. There was no question that everything I learned was tailored by the cultural paradigm and the imperatives of our historical enemy, and that I had to study other folk to be able to do the work that's impactful for my community. And so I always want to give honor, particularly for a topic like this around the psychological harm, to those authors, those scholars and warriors who gave me my framework. So the Wade Nobles, the Naeem Akbars, the Francis Cress Welsing's, the Bobby Wrights, who talked about menticide, the Kobe Cambones, the Baba Hannibal Freak, even on my brother's shirt, brother Olufemi shirt. I work with him in Chicago, and so like the work is continuing. What I'm going to have to share isn't a brand new thing. It's just me doing my work to reinterrogate the field. The trauma, the sadness of the moment we in is because of the stronghold that Europeans have on the field, is that even when we win reparations, if the first thing on the docket is free therapy for all the Black people, we're going to employ an army of therapists that have been trained in white thought, right? That's the tragedy. So when we talk about the depth of the harm, it's that deep that even a bunch of free therapists could not save us because they don't have the medicine, because they've been trained in the systems. We got the licenses and the degrees that have taken us far away from the thing that brings us restoration, right? And so we got to look at this at the layers of harm in which has occurred to us. I want to share a couple of quick slides just to reinforce this point. I like I can show you better than I can tell you. Let's see if this works. Y'all see this slide, psychological trauma? So this is the topic. This is the idea. So I was asked to share a few words on what does it mean for what does it mean for our minds to continue to be violently imposed upon? And we in a country that has mastered this, right? They've been doing this for a long time. Embedded in our definitions of success is psychological trauma, right? They have created machines. The scaffolding metaphor is really powerful. The structure is embedded, so they can. It looks different, but the same mechanisms have been in play for a long time. And taking the people as they are, with their natural medicines and practices and spiritual understandings and connections to the earth, and put them through a machinery of America, created a version of success, and make cogs in the machine to perpetuate that. And I submit that the healers have to do the same work to remove ourselves from that system as everyone else. We are not immune to that scaffolding, right? It's embedded in every single thing that we do. I can't ask the question about what is today without saying Thursday. Anyway, what's today? Thursday. What is the origin of that word Thursday, right? The Thurs comes from the god Thor. I can't say Thursday without paying an homage to Greek and Roman gods. I can't. My space, my time, my sense of place has been inundated with the culture of my enemy, right? And it takes just a little bit of digging to realize that they stole Thor. That Thor is a mimicry of African deity, called Shango, who is also the god of thunder, god of authority, the god of kingship, right? And so we don't call it Shango Day. We should, but just in the very being of being an American, I can't not say a whisper every time I say my name. There's a badge of shame, right? I'm supposed to say Dr. Cartman with pride, but I say Dr. Cartman and I almost whisper it sometimes because when I remember how ashamed I am that I'm still carrying the legacy of that trauma in my name, and I pass that down to my children, right? I say that with shame. I'm embarrassed about that. What year is it? Everybody say 2022. Depends on what calendar you're looking at. They have shame. I can't look at the stars without seeing constellations. I can't say I live on Jefferson Drive. I can't write my address down without paying homage to an enemy of my people. I can't look the names of the streets and the building. It is an ecosystem of cultural, psychological violence every day of my life. So this is a quick pop quiz. You ain't got to answer out loud. I just want you to give an example of what that means in the day-to-day of our life. You can say classical music to most Black people, and they hear violins, they hear cello, oboe. There's a certain connotation of what classic means. Classic connected to standard, classic connected to excellence, right? Posturing. There's a respect that's connected to classic. But if you talk about classic being the first or the best, you can't do that without talking about Africa, without the orchestras and the polyrhythms and the science and the music and the beauty of our classic civilizations. We got folk on this call that have studied ancient classical civilizations and maybe have shifted their worldview, but it's a long work to undo the psychological damage of just the language that we use on an everyday basis. You say primitive, you think bones and you think cannibal. I used to think black people were cannibals in Africa. Watching Tom and Jerry's and the Tarzan. I grew up in the same way. I grew up because in my house we were protected from something. We celebrating Kwanzaa's. My dad took us to play, playing djembes in the house, and he wasn't as advanced to do the Risha stuff yet. But like he put me on a pathway to restore the dignity of African in my worldview and my day-to-day walk. But it took a long time to get that out of me, even in my house, because I still go to school and it was still getting called African booty scratchers, right? So I had to wrestle with that. What does that mean? To have my family say this is beautiful, but my community say this is ugly. So when I say primitive, you think backwards. You think, you don't think beauty when you think primitive. We the first people. We created math science. We created civilization. We don't think about that, the glory of primitive. We think about the shame. So then we say we want to get connected to our ancestors, but most black people are tired of hearing about, even the slave story because we tell it in such a defeating way. I'm in Chicago. We hear high crime neighborhood over and over again. High crime neighborhoods here are Inglewood or K-Town, Roseland. You think black people when you think crime. That's psychological damage. You don't think of who creates the conditions that perpetuates the crime. The highest crime neighborhood in Chicago is downtown Chicago. That's where the politicians live. That's where the corporations operate. That's the base of power in the city. This is the most criminal, right? In Illinois, we got criminals that get locked up for real. The highest rate, the most vicious criminals that get punished for their crimes are coming out of Illinois. But you don't think about that. That's not the vision of criminal you see. You see, I talk to the boys and they say, "What's a criminal look like?" They will describe themselves. They won't describe a guy in a suit and tie sitting in the boardroom creating the conditions that perpetuate crime. That's psychological damage. I think gang violence. There's a very clear image of what gang violence looks like. It don't look like what it is. It don't look like Congress. It don't look like the Senate. It don't look like the CPD, right? We have to reconfigure everything that we know, place, time, space, to be able to reframe all of the things that shape the worldview and the very basic function of how we live in this place. The psychological damage ain't just depression and anxiety. It's not just PTSD. It's not just social anxiety. It's embedded in the very nature of what normal is to be black in America. We struggle with this, the African American of us. Most black people are ashamed of the African part and are left just with the American part. And more recently are now being more disturbed by that part. And now we just out here, right? That's psychological damage. And so we got a lot of folks that have been studying this, that have been giving us directions to how to restore this and to repair this. We have to lean on them in this moment. The mental health movement cannot be the popular memes and the Twitters and the clubhouses. It has to be study of the scholars of ABSW, ABSI, these cultural legacies that have been left for us. We have to be able to pass those down to our young people because they think that some of the stuff they're saying is new. They think they're clever because of it, because they're disconnected from these conversations. So that's my charge. That's my role in this moment, is try to figure out how to keep the memories alive of those that taught me, because none of this stuff is new for me. But it's not the talking points of the mental health movement that we're in. We're talking, self-care. We're talking going to get spas. We're talking even individual therapy in a framework that does not restore and reconnect us to ourselves. Will only get us to surviving a little bit longer. It won't heal intergenerational harm. And so that's the charge. That's the challenge, and that's some of the impact. And there's lots of work to do, but lots of work has been done, and I stand on the mighty shoulders of those folks that have done that, and look forward to the next steps of this work.
Thank you, Dr. Cartman, for another one of those powerful messages. And now we're going to move on to the emotional emancipation circles talking about Sister Enola. She's the founder and president of Community Healing Network. Please, ma'am.
Good afternoon, family. Can you hear me? Good. Brother Dr. Cartman, it is my privilege to follow you, young brother, as an elder, as your elder. It is my privilege to follow you. Our sisters and brothers have brilliantly laid down the situation for us. Each of the speakers have illustrated the point that as people of African ancestry, we have been living our lives, all of our lives, from the moment even before we took our first breaths. For the last 600 years, all African people have been living our lives according to a narrative written for us by other people to serve their interests. And your presentation, Dr. Cartman, really perfectly illustrates that. The Chattahoochee story illustrates that. And the scaffolding metaphor illustrates that. So what is that narrative grounded in? We at Community Healing Network are obsessed with the root cause, trying to find what is the root cause. And as declared by Dr. King back in 1967, it's quite simple in our view. Somebody told a lie one day. They made everything Black, ugly, and evil. That lie, the lie that tells us the world that Black people are inferior, is the root cause of the dehumanization of Black people and the source of the distinct challenges that we face here and everywhere else in the world that we find ourselves. That lie is what has justified the subhuman treatment of Black people from the beginning of the 15th century until this very moment. The lie is the thread that runs through, unseen, throughout the whole fabric of systemic anti-Blackness. Until we free ourselves from that lie, Black people's lives will continue to be devalued, and we and our children will continue to suffer. Community Healing Network is building a global grassroots movement for emotional emancipation. Our aim is to mobilize Black people everywhere to free ourselves from the lie of white superiority and Black inferiority, because let's not mistake it, there is no Black inferiority in the absence of white superiority. White superiority creates Black inferiority. And we see this work as an essential first step in creating an ecosystem for optimal Black wellness. We cannot be well until we free ourselves from this lie. I want to tell you what we are doing to destroy the lie, but I have to start by lifting up the truth. And for that, I refer to our beloved ancestor, Marcus Garvey, who said, "We Black people have a beautiful history, and we shall create another in the future that will astonish this world." CHN's work starts from that proposition, that our history started long before the horrors of enslavement and colonization. Africa, the home of our ancestors, is the cradle of human civilization and the wealthiest continent on the face of the earth in terms of natural resources, which is the reason why they told the lie and spread it everywhere. It is the home of ancient civilizations that, in the words of historian Henry Louis Gates, were just as splendid as any on the face of this earth. But those beautiful civilizations were disrupted by the telling of the lie to justify the enslavement of Africans and the exploitation of Africa's riches. Europeans erased Africa's amazing history and replaced it with the lie, Black inferiority, a lie first told in the 1400s by the Portuguese as they launched the transatlantic trafficking of African human beings. The lie was incredibly powerful. The lie marked an entire continent and all of its people as subhuman. It cast the Black people of this earth out of the circle of humanity. The lie was used, as you correctly point out, as an instrument of cultural imperialism and psychological domination that has for 6 centuries imposed European standards on African people. Every Black person born in the last 600 years anywhere in this world has carried the presumption of inferiority and has had to make the best of living under an emotionally damaging anti-Black mindset fueled by the lie. The lie is at the heart of the crime against the humanity of African people. It is the fundamental damage that must be repaired and the greatest harm for which we are owed reparations, what I call emotional reparations. But I want you to stop and think, family, how much we as a people have accomplished even while carrying the weight of the lie on our shoulders and in our minds and in our spirits for generations. That is just how amazing we are. Just imagine how much more we and our children will be able to achieve when we finally take the time to heal from and extinguish the lie, which we are going to do. CHN launched in 2006, and we've developed a number of strategies to help promote this movement for freedom from the lie. But our signature program is the Emotional Emancipation Circle, an African-centered, community-defined self-help healing and support group process originated by CHN, developed in collaboration with our esteemed colleagues of the Association of Black Psychologists. CHN and ABSI have planted seeds for EECs in more than 50 cities around the world, including the United States, the Caribbean, the United Kingdom, Ghana, South Africa. The EEC is a vehicle for African-centered intergenerational healing, reparations, and restoration that is resonating with Black people across the diaspora. Because many in our audience are social workers, I want to share what Monica Thomas, a social worker in Ohio, posted on Instagram just a few days ago. We just found it on Instagram. She says, "I remember when I became an emotional emancipation circle facilitator with CHN. This was the first time I ever felt fully set free from the lies I had come to believe about myself and my culture. Not only did I experience liberation from those beliefs, ideas, and perceptions, but I was able to sit in a room and laugh and cry and dance and break bread with others impacted by the same messages. Making the decision to do that level of work in community was the greatest gift I gave my mind, my body, my soul, my ancestral memory, and my collective consciousness. So thankful to my sis for introducing the community to this great work," end quote. Emotional emancipation circles are safe, Black-only spaces where we are working together, guided by the African values of Ubuntu. I am because we are. I cannot be me without you. And Sawubona, we see you in the deepest sense possible. We're using these values to guide us to deepen our understanding of the lie and its impact on our lives. And we are writing our own personal emotional emancipation proclamations and our own plans to escape the Eurocentric mindset that is grounded in the lie and to begin to live according to a new mindset driven by the truth of Black humanity. EE circles also help us deepen our understanding of how our brains and our bodies react to stress, the chronic stress that we are subject to, and how we can develop the resiliency that is necessary to help us relieve that stress. Through these EE circles, Black people are escaping from the Eurocentric narrative and mindset. And we want to invite you to come with us. I want to ask, where are we going? We are going back into our right minds, undistorted by the lie, to a renewed mindset grounded in the truth. We are determined to make 2021 to 2030 the decade to embrace the truth of Black humanity. You know, Zora Neale Hurston said, "Mama exhorted us to jump at the sun. We might not get there, but at least we get off the ground." That's why we are very clean on setting deadlines for ourselves. We are clearing the way to that beautiful future that Garvey envisioned, a future in which we Black people love and trust ourselves and each other and are empowered to work more effectively together, a future in which we can bequeath to our children the foundations of self-love, self-determination, and optimal health and wellness. It is customary for people in the struggle, and we're going to hear it next week during Martin Luther King's celebration, for us to say the struggle continues, as though we are destined as a people to struggle indefinitely. I reject that view. I never say the struggle continues. I say instead the struggle is ending because we Black people are ending it by destroying the root cause of our dehumanization. So family, we are escaping the Eurocentric mindset. We invite you to come with us because our children and our ancestors are waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Enola Arid, for those powerful words. There is something that I didn't do in the beginning, was to say thank you, Asante Sana, to Olufemi Shepsu for putting this together. And he is the co-chair of the Pan-African Committee with the National Association of Black Social Workers. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Asante Santa. We want to go now to our sister over here. Were there any questions from the chat?
Yes, sister, I was going to do the next steps and contextualize, and we go right into it. Madasha's sister, but also want to acknowledge my co-chair, Dr. Johnnie Hamilton Mason, who's been on the national level of the NABSW for a number of years. And I'm learning from this sister every day and taking notes. And sister, just happy to have you by my side to learn from you. Again, this is a very powerful session. It's really nothing really I can really say, but I also just want to add to it that what we're seeing today is just the mere continuation of the liberation and the freedom work of our ancestors. The modern day Maroonish movement coming from Gonga Zumba, Francois McKendall, Dessalines, Nanny Cujo, Johnnie Acapone, Nanaya and Santua, Araminta, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, all of those brothers and sisters who have continued to fight the good fight on the spirit side, as well as the side that we're on now. So this is an ancestral guided movement. We are reawakening ancestral DNA as we're healing ourselves intergenerationally. And our ancestors have laid the blueprint for what we have to do to heal our people. And today I'm very honored to have on my shirt the former president, give him a shout out for Cobra, the late great Asar Nana Hannibal Afrique, who is here with us today guiding this movement. So this is what we're doing, this is what we're attempting. And we have been given the charge by our national president, the Honorable Melissa Haley, and our Honorable National Vice President, Renata Heading-Jones, to form this mighty coalition within Cobra, with the Community Healing Network, with ABSI, and we're going to be the major power brokers that's going to establish this footprint, not just here in America, but throughout the rest of the diaspora. So next steps, part 2 of this conversation will be hosted by NABSW during our annual Lunch and Learn session on February 17th at 12 p.m. We're going to send that link out as soon as possible. And more than likely, it's going to probably be the same panel that we have right here. And we're just going to have a part 2 of this dialogue and move this thing forward. Part 3 of the conversation will take place in Chi-Town. Hopefully it won't be too cold during March. That's March 9th through 11th. The Pan-African Affairs Committee, which comprises Johnnie Hamilton Mason, Onaje, Muid, and a few others, will be having an institute, I believe, on that Wednesday, the 9th, that will be talking about Pan-Africanism, as well as next steps for this movement that we'll be dealing with within Cobra and our other organizations. And the last bit of contextualization is that we plan on within our committee and with NABSW is using the harm report as an action plan to make sure that we are all speaking the same common language of what we're up against and what it has done, what has white supremacy historically done to us mentally, physically, spiritually, and socially, so that we're all speaking that common language. And then we plan on using the EECs by the Community Healing Network to nationalize that as a part of NABSW.
And
to get on the same.
CHN and AB side, we're partners in the EECs. We're collaborators in the EECs. I always got to get our partners in.
There we go. There we go. And so we're going to bring NABSW is going to come on board with this thing, and we're just going to stretch this thing out to make sure that it's a nice cohesive move as we are doing the work of the work of healing our people and healing our ancestors. And lastly, before we entertain questions, I want to take a look at just where we were 100 years ago. Okay, we had the swine flu pandemic. We had the Red Summers. We had a white supremacist administration in place under Woodrow Wilson, I believe, was the president at that time, doing all sorts of harm to our people. But at the same time, we had the Niagara movement. We had Marcus Mosiah Garvey doing his work. We have valiant race women and men that were on the front lines throughout America doing the healing work. So we find ourselves in the same place. But now we're going to make sure that we're going to have a context for healing, as was stated by Obari, by Sister Enola, by Sister Hamilton Mason, by Onaje, by Dr. Melissa Speight. We're going to continue that narrative and make sure that we're going to do whatever needs to be done to heal our people and to heal our ancestors. Madasi, Madasi, Madasi. So, sister, you can move on with any questions if we have any questions. I can't read the whoever can get a hold of the chat. So, Sister Lillie Jackson, you want to take charge of the questions?
Oh, okay. I didn't read anything, write anything down, but I'm going to start from the top. And there were a lot of comments. There were some very good comments in the chat from the representing organization, NABSW, AB side. A lot of welcome, everyone. Very good information. Right now, we have 81 people on this call. So somebody wanted to hear the news. So here we are with the news. Greetings,
if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and then we could try to get them out there. We have about 8 minutes, so we may have maybe 1 or 2 we can maybe be able to respond to. Very short response.
I didn't see any question. Onaje, you put the book in the chat. Someone that did ask for the book that you referenced.
Yes, I did put 2 books that I mentioned. Another Case for Reparations by Kenneth Nave, Competent Proof. And also the other book is in the chat, The Social Life of DNA. I would like to add another book. It's called The Social Health of a Nation by Marangoff. This book is very important because it gives us a framework to look at the health of our community and begin to address those concerns. And we can look at the work of Dwight Mullins out of North Carolina. He has a website that's called Black Asheville. And in this site, what he did, he's got his students. He's a former professor at the University of North Carolina. He got former students to actually do the research. So now the students are engaged in true education, not just training. So that's another part of the work that the Health Commission is going to do, is begin to parcel out the different categories of health that we have to be concerned with. We have to be concerned with public health, and also we have to be concerned with psychological mental health as well. And all these different education constructs that we have been introduced to can now serve us rather than us serving them.
Thank you, Dr. Onaje. There was one question in the, will there be CEUs for these workshop presentations? I'd like to say yes, and I can help facilitate that, because here in Ohio, I do presentations and I'm familiar with the board and what their requirements are, unless someone else wants to take that on. But I agree we should have CEUs. And there is a little requirement, and I can talk to Brother Olufemi about how to do that. If he want me to do it, that can be done. That can be done.
Speaking of CEUs, there is a Dr. Hassan Batts out of Allentown, Pennsylvania, who has put out the call for us to create our own university. So it's not just the CEUs for our different disciplines, but why can't we bring all our scholars together and create our own university? And now, since universities are doing synchronous and asynchronous work, it's really a light lift compared to what it was before, because it doesn't have to be brick and mortar. So I think that's another charge that's in front of us. And this is what all our African leaders have talked about, creating our own independent institutions.
Yeah, but that's good too. But right now, you know who we work for, and we want to keep these licenses, and they give us what every other year, social workers, we have to turn this, something CEUs in. But that's a good idea for the future.
So, Sister Lillie, we'd ask you to go ahead and start that process for the CEUs. Thank you so much for volunteering.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Will do. Were there any other questions or concerns?
Well, I would invite everyone to join in COBRA. We have 5, which is called injury areas. Peoplehood is 1, mass incarceration is 2, health is 3, economics is 4, and education is 5. So even though this presentation is geared towards the third one, health, those other aspects still need your work and your intelligence. So we're asking people to join, both as an individual in COBRA and also as an organization. And the idea is that as the Health Commission continues to grow, we'll have representations from each of the other organizations so that we have a constant breathing process of information coming in and information going out. We have already started, and I'd like to thank Dr. Obari Chapman for the work that he's done, because his organization was the first organization to do a people's response to the harm report, and that will make that. If you can put that in the chat, Dr. Obari, that would be appreciative, where people can actually see that. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all the comments from the people and compile them into a quarterly journal. So there is a constant conversation back and forth between what we're putting out, how the community is responding to it, and together we'll grow in our collective understanding and our collective work and responsibility. So we're in the process of doing that, but I want to thank Dr. Obari for being the first one to come to the call of the harm report, because it's a discussion piece, and we want to make that prominent in each of the different disciplines that we happen to be a part of.
This came up in the.
Go ahead, sister.
This came up in the chat. Can anyone discuss progress regarding a practical framework that addresses what reparations look like? Please share.
I don't mind speaking to it. International law speaks to genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. Those are the 3 major international crimes that people have said, when that is happening, it's taking it beyond the ordinary crimes. Slavery was declared a crime against humanity in 2001 as a delegate to the United Nations World Conference Against Racism. If we look at the work of Van Boven, the Special Rapporteur on Reparations, he says compensation, restitution, rehabilitation, as well as satisfaction, and a monitoring system so it doesn't happen again. So now we are starting to align ourselves with those different aspects of reparations, and it can be both collective and it also can be individual. We also know that there is something that our people have not, studied much, and it's called the Declaration of Minorities. And in there, they talk about social minorities, national minorities, as well as linguistic minorities and religious minorities, that says there's something called special measures and something called special rights. Special measures is something that's put in place to bring a people to on par with other parts of society that they've been denied of. Special rights is a permanent legislative process that says that that group will always be protected. So we have to use the work of Marcus Garvey. We have to use the work of Yusuf Clyde. We have to use the work of Patterson, and to begin to use international language to talk about what the solution, not only what the problem is, but what the solutions are, because we know that the solutions are not going to be found inside of a national structure that created the problems. We have to go to human rights to declare our human rights on this earth at this time by any means necessary.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, everyone. And as we're closing out, just be on the lookout. Hopefully we should get a flyer cranked out here pretty soon on the second part of this conversation during the NABSW's annual Lunch and Learn, February 17th at 12 p.m. Mark that on your calendar and be on the lookout for the flyer.
Thank you.
Brother Olufemi, we're asking you to close out with a prayer.
Oh, all right.
Request came forward.
Okay, everyone, as we close out, we want to say again, Madasi Pa to the Orisha, the Albasum, the Nananom, Insamafo, the Egungun. We call upon all of those ancient Africans, the Greeks, the Romans, the Hyksos, Namer, Mentuhotep, the sons of Ra, Tabaka, Pianki, Shabaka. We call upon Shaka Zulu, Nana Nzinga, Hannibal of Carthage, Nanaya Santua. We call upon all those mighty and valiant Africans in the Caribbean that fought the Portuguese, that fought against the Dutch, Agonga Zumba, Francois McKendale, Cecil Fatima, Hoogan Bookman, Dasalanis, Nani, Cujo, Johnnie, Al Capone. We call upon all those valiant scholars, Amos Wilson, Drusilla Dungy Houston, Kobe Cambone, John Henry Clark. We call upon all those Africans that dedicated their lives on the battlegrounds here in the belly of the beast, Rosa Parks, Aramitha Harriet Tubman, Fannie Lou Hamer, all of those valiant men and women, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Hannibal Afrique, all those Africans that were burned, boiled, castrated, beheaded, tarred and feathered, eviscerated. But most importantly, we say Madasi to all the Africans that survived all those atrocities that are guiding the freedom and the liberation movement in 2022. We are here, we have heard the call of the ancestors, and we have answered. Madasi, Madasi, Madasi.
Thank you.
Wow. Powerful.
Somebody's asking for a membership application in the chat as we sign off. Harambe 7 times. Let's pull together.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great the rest of your day, all.
You also.
You can lead, sister? Harambe?
Harambe.
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 All right, fantastic job, everyone. This is powerful.
So, how will we get the recording?